Now, I wouldn't mind camping, but it's going to have to be in a controlled environment, free from bears, mountain lions, and whatever animal territories that we may be trespassing on. The idea that I'm sleeping in the same area as a brown bear who at any time can just walk up or crawl up and just eat my ass or beat my ass or both ain't no way. Fortunately for me, I get to choose where I sleep. Others may not be so lucky. What if your job requires you to sleep where you work, and each night you'll be preyed upon by a predator that no one would ever see or hear, and the only evidence will be the harrowing cries of the victims being dragged to their final resting place? But is this real or just a story to scare the new workers? This is episode 6, The Tsavo Man-Eaters. Great Britain needed to import their raw materials and trade goods into Uganda. In order to do so, they needed a railroad bridge over the Tsavo River. Now, over in London, the Uganda Railway Committee is like, we need someone to oversee this pricey project that will eventually link Uganda with the Indian Ocean at Kilinidini, forgive me, harbor. Enter the story's main character, Lieutenant Colonel John Henry Patterson. Who is Mr. Patterson? Born November 10th, 1867 in Faughny, Ballymohan, County Longford, Ireland. Whew. He joined the British Army in 1885 at the age of 17 and eventually attained the rank of lieutenant colonel and was awarded the Distinguished Service Order, DSO for short. He retired from the Army in 1920, and it should be noted that he's an expert hunter. All right, so John arrives in Kenya as well as thousands of Sikh laborers from British India, along with local Kenyans, all looking for a job. Side note, the workers were also dealing with some shit before the Lions even entered the picture. We had a clash of cultures, religions, languages being lost in translation, all in this melting pot we call a job. John had this to say, quote, "The Masons were continually having quarrels and fights among themselves and had frequently to go to their camp to quell disturbances and to separate the Hindus from the Mohammedans." End quote. There were also supposedly a rebellion that was garnering up, but John put a honk to that ass. He said, not today. We're not in the mood. We're not going to do that. Back to the story. John and the workers get to the campsite. It's this flat, hard-ass land with nothing but dirt and rocks with some bushes peppered here and there and sleep under. And they'd be spread across several miles of land. Now, John and his assistant, Abdullah, their tents were set up several feet away from the workers, but still close. During the day, workers would head just a short distance to work and head back to the camping grounds. So the only thing they would be focused on is work and sleep. So it hasn't even been a good 72 hours when we get our first kill. Mind you, John, along with other superiors and the locals, were all aware, or at least knew about these Lions attacks prior. And John was like, okay, well, let's kill them before it becomes our problem. But the natives were like, no, it will be useless, because they believe the Lions, who they gave the names Ghost and Darkness, were angry spirits of departed native chiefs who were protesting the railway and that they were building across the land. And so they were protesting by killing anyone involved. Mind you, John hasn't seen the lions. He's receiving all this information almost as like rumors or tales from the locals. So he writes this off as a tall tale. And he's just like, okay, like whatever y'all say, like y'all do you. So I'm guessing, this is just my opinion, I'm guessing that morning during the check-in when 2 of the workers don't clock in and a handful of the men are like, they were eaten by lions, John doesn't put 2 and 2 together. He's like, no, be for real, where are they? Like, where are these workers? Keep in mind, it's a big campsite that's spread out over miles. So there's not going to be an instant reaction of panic when they hear the word man-eating lions or the word man-eating lions. Because A, no one saw the lions, and B, it happened at night. Not exactly the perfect timing if you want to strike fear in everyone. Because imagine if the attacks happened during the day. There would have been more witnesses, and the steps of stopping the killings could have been done earlier, and how many lives would have been saved because of that. But that's not the case. Back to the story. John doesn't think it's the lions. He's taking a more reasonable, more logical approach. He's telling himself, someone killed these 2 workers over religion/cultural differences, like I mentioned earlier. Or they were robbed and killed over their rubies by scoundrels or nearby gangs, because both men had a good amount of change saved. So John writes this off as a one-off incident and presses forward. It won't be until 3 weeks later that shit really pops off, when a very prominent Jamadar was killed. Context. A Jamadar was, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, correctly, Jemadar, was originally an armed officer of a Zamindar, a federal lord in India, who is like a military general. Okay, so that's what a Jamadar was. So once again, it's the morning, and now the rumbles of the lion killings are even louder among the workers. John dismisses this, and he's like, where's Ugan Singh? And in fear of his tent mates, Ugan's tent mates are like, he was killed by a lion. And John's like, not this shit again. Enough. But Ugan's tent mates is like, oh, you don't believe us? Come with us. Like, let us, we're going to show you. So John and everyone else goes over to Ugan's tent. And sure enough, John looks down to see not only pug marks, or you may know, paw prints, but fell remarks made by Ugan as he dug his heels into the sand as he was being dragged away. So he sees all this. He's just like, oh my God. Then more of Ugan's tent mates, because there was about 6 of them, I think, they come forward and tell him what happened. They tell John. It was about midnight and everyone's winding down, just chit-chatting among themselves, when a damn lion head pops into the tent. I don't mean to laugh. That is wild to see. So yeah, and everyone said they didn't have time to react, because the next thing they know, the lion grabbed Ugan's by the throat, because he just happened to be, near the opening of the tent. That was his resting spot, right? And he calls out, "Choro, let go," trying to throw his arms around the lion's neck. His mates were frozen with fear as they could just sit and listen to him being dragged away. And after hearing this and obviously seeing the, evidence backing up the story, John is like, give me my rifle. Because he's about to do what he should have done when he first heard about the lion attacks, and that is to kill them. So he and his companion, Captain Haslam, go and try to track down the lions. Now, okay, here we go. So, unfortunately, Captain Haslam would also end up being killed as well. And I don't know how, because John doesn't mention it in the story. So, that's unfortunate. So, that's what happens. So, okay. So, this is how the first round of attacks went about. There would be a few killings from time to time, And when John and his people will go track down ghosts and death, there will be a few killings from time to time. And when John and his people will go track ghosts and death down, nothing. Like they couldn't find them. Now this cycle went on for months. These lions were literally playing cat and mouse. No pun intended. And then silence. For months, there were no killings or signs of the lions. And that's how pretty much the first half of the year wrapped up. And the reason I'm saying that, because these attacks took place between March through December. So I'm assuming by the end of spring to midsummer is when the attacks ceased. Now, fast forward to midsummer going towards fall/winter. It's nighttime, and a lot of the workers have been sleeping outside their tents to catch some cool air because it's still summer and it's hot and dry as hell in those tents. So they're chilling outside, they're like relaxing. Then suddenly there's this scream followed by cries and wailing. And John and everyone else was like, here we go again. And bless these workers' heart, but they had built a thorn fence to protect themselves from the attacks. But unless you're building the Great Wall of China, these little fences was a skip and a hop for these two lions. They also built a bonfire, but bonfires are like stationary, so the lions just went around it. They also fired shots at these lions, but there was to no avail. So yeah, at least they try, Now, during the early stages of the killings, one lion, and I'm going to say it was Ghost, will enter the camping grounds, while Death will be back at the den. So Death was nowhere near the campgrounds, pretty much, right? Death was nowhere near. It would just be Ghost going in at the campsites and then dragging the victims back to the den where Death would meet it. And so, but this time around, John follows Ghost and Sue, who is just 30 yards away from the workers. John follows Ghost and Sue, who is waiting, but Death, the lion, on the other side of the campsite fence. And these two lions did not waste any time eating their victims right then and there, just 30 yards away from the workers. And it was said that they did not finish until they were done eating. Yeah, and mind you, these people were still shooting at these lions as they're eating, and they did not move. Yeah, wild. But it was getting worse. It would get worse and worse when both Ghost and Death began pulling up to the site at the same damn time. The workers were like, to hell with all of this, and they started dipping out. The Indian workers were like, fuck it, Africa is our home now. They're like, yo, that's a wrap. We're moving. We're staying. But no, seriously though. But with all this shit happening, production on the railway comes to a stop. Over in Great Britain, who's already feeling some type of way about the railways, they think it's a money pit. So Great Britain is already feeling some type of way about the railways. They think it's a money pit. So when they get word of these man-eating lions putting a halt to production, they're like, let me put out a statement to act like we care. Okay, so this is from the Prime Minister, Lord Salisbury. Quote, the whole of the workers were put a stop to for 3 weeks because a party of man-eating lions appeared in the local tea and conceived a most unfortunate taste of our porters. At last, the laborers entirely declined to go on unless they were guarded by an iron entrenchment. Of course, it is difficult to work on a railway order under these conditions. And until we find an enthusiastic sportsman to get rid of these lions, our enterprise was seriously hindered. End quote. John's like, oh, hell no. You're not going to make me the laughing stock of Great Britain. So he has his sights set. I'm killing these 2 damn lions, comes hell and high water. I'm about to go in. All right. Okay. The first killing. It was becoming easier to track down the lions because, unfortunately, they would make pit stops along the way before eating their quote-unquote meals, because there would be pools of blood marking their spots. So John and his team were like, okay, bet, we got a plan. They set up several traps along these routes, but they all fail. Then, one afternoon in December, John gets the idea of using our carcass of a donkey. I'm guessing he had it standing up right? Like, as if it was still alive and just chilling and shit. So yeah, that was the idea, right? So while he will be off in the distance, waiting on an improv tree stand with the chair perched on higher grounds. I believe he was alone for these killings. I think actually both killings, because he told his people to hang back. So there's that. Okay, John is waiting for both, or like he's waiting. Okay, John is waiting for one or both lions to appear. Some time passed, and John is watching the donkey, and there's nothing happening. There's like nothing coming in that area. No birds, buzzards, no other predators or scavengers, nothing. Then John starts getting this feeling that he's being watched. And sure enough, he looks up into the distance and sees ghosts lying low in the grass watching his ass. These 2 will go on for 2 hours just like casing each other, right? Just like kind of just waiting for a signal to strike, or someone to fail, and then they would make the first move. You know what I mean? Just like kind of just casing each other up. See? Okay, so I guess Ghost figured it was his time, because when he thought John couldn't see him, he like aligned himself right in John's view, and began like inching closer. John said no and shot twice. Bang, bang. The second shot hit Ghost, mind you, the lion. The second shot hit Ghost, causing him to leap and wail about. So he dashes off into some thick bushes. As he's running, John continues to fire more rounds towards this direction. Bang, 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 bang. And when John couldn't see any movement or hear any groans, he goes over to the bushes and finds that Ghost was officially dead. Oh, sorry. Now, after examination, it was determined the very first bullet that was shot had pierced the lion's left shoulder and into his heart. The second was off its head. So that was the killing of Ghost. Now, the killing of the second lion, Death, was pretty much the same. John places himself on top of a scaffolding near corpses of goats that the lion killed earlier. Death scrolls up looking for John, and he'll end up getting shot before taking off. So he scrolls up, bang, and he dashes off. Now, from my understanding, the lion showed up a week later, and they say it was stalking John at this point, but I don't know. I guess it's possible. That's up to you guys to decide. Death shows up, and this time John will fire 2 more shots, striking him before taking off again. So Death comes, the lion. John's like bang, bang. Once again, Death will flee again, right? This is going back and forth. The next day, John and his team will find Death and will end up shooting several more times. twice in the chest and one in the head, killing the last of the Tsavo man-eaters. I don't know why. I'm kind of like, apart from the killings, it's like, damn, they dead. Like, they died. Okay. All right. John had this to say, quote, "At length came a series of mighty groans, gradually subsiding into deep sighs, and finally ceasing altogether. And I felt convinced that one of the devils who had so long harried us would trouble us no more." End quote. Now for that extra razzle-dazzle, John claimed death was gnarling on a fallen tree branch, still trying to reach him. Okay, girl. It's your story to tell. Don't let anyone say otherwise. Okay. Now, John would use the dead lions as exotic floor ornaments. Then he would go on and sell the skins and skulls to the Film Museum of Natural History of Chicago, Illinois, in exchange for $5,000. The hens were made into rugs. So when it came time for the taxidermist to mount the lions, they would end up much smaller in size than they actually are. John would go on and stay in Africa for several more weeks, meeting and writing about the various tribes and its people. He will recount hunting stories and close encounters with other lions and other animals. And you can read all about this in his semi-biography called The Man-Eaters of Tsavo and Other East African Adventures. And heads up, he does use derogatory terms, so, there's that. Now, it would be years later for an explanation to why these pairs of the Tsavo lions may have eaten people. It was said that the Tsavo region was hit by a drought. Now, at the Kenya Wildlife Service, Deputy Director of Biodiversity Research and Monitoring, Samuel Koski, had this to say, quote, "For centuries, Arab slave caravans passed through Tsavo on the way to Mombasa. The death rate was high. It was a bad area for sleeping sickness from the tsetse fly, and the bodies of slaves who died or were dying were left where they dropped. So the lions may have gotten their taste for human flesh by eating the corpses." End quote. It was said that the lions had killed 35 people, but John said that the pair killed about 130. But people were like, okay, John, anything to sell a book. Which he did get worldwide recognition from. The book would be adapted to 3 films: a British film of the 1950s, a 1952 3D film titled Bwana Devil, and a 1996 color version called The Ghost and the Darkness, starring Michael Douglas and Val Kilmer playing a daring engineer who hunts down the lions of Tsavo. And there you have it, the story of the Tsavo man-eaters. But I came into the story thinking this was a one-off incident in a time of history where this freaky phenomenon of lions all of a sudden hunting people. And to this day, there is no rhyme or reason to why these killings took place, right? In fact, that would have been a lot scarier to have that. The unsettling realization of humans not being as controlled as they think they are or were. But no, it wasn't. This is another case of humans just being reckless, dumping bodies along the way as if it's just trash, not a care in the world of the impacts that would cause to neighboring villagers as they pass through. And what about Great Britain, who even didn't want this railway from the sounds of it? So, what was the point? I know you're importing goods, but it was just if they saw it as a money pit, then what was it for? I don't know. But I do wonder, though, take away the component of the bodies being dumped along the sideway, along the side of the railway, and take away the lions eating human flesh for the first time, right? So if the bodies weren't dumped along the railway, the lions would not know the taste of human flesh. So take that away, and take into the account of the drought and the unfortunate virus that dwindled the Tsavo lions' food options. What would have been the lions' options for food? Would they venture off, further from their territory to get food? Or, would the lions eventually just turn to humans to eat? Would that have been an option for them? Or, the last, I won't even say last resort, like either venture off or, where they would have eaten the humans. Yeah, that's something to think about. But, I wondered. But yeah, that's the story of Tsavo lions. If you enjoyed this episode and want to continue to learn with me, then please like, share, and subscribe to the series. This has been Mind Over Wonder, Episode 6, The Tsavo Man-Eaters.